Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here to talk about the person and the specific work of Giancarlo Menotti. In this case, The Medium. This is a wonderful opera. It really is. A sort of chambery opera or short opera in 62 minutes, I think, here. Somewhere around there in one act. It's absolutely splendid. At least I think it has one act. I just listened to the whole thing all the way through, there's no reason to divvy it up. No, it's in two acts, thank you. But they're half an hour each. It's beautifully proportioned. And oh my, what a terrific story. Menotti wrote the libretto himself. His career has really tanked since he passed away in 2005-ish or so, I think it was. And really, there's no reason for it. He wrote wonderful, wonderful music, lots of it, including operas that are approachable. I mean, the most famous being Amal and the Night Visitors, of course, which we're going to talk about. And he has he doesn't really sound like anybody else because nobody was sounding like him. Everybody else was doing atonal craziness while he was sticking to the Verismo Italian tradition, but writing in English for the most part, sometimes in Italian. He was born in Italy, but he was American by adoption. He was the life partner of Samuel Barber, at least until the failure of Barber's Antony and Cleopatra, after which Barber sunk into a depression. It was really a very sad story, and life together became somewhat impossible. So they split up, but they remained friends throughout the remainder of Barber's life. Menotti was a serious composer, but he wasn't taken very seriously because he wrote to be heard. He wrote for people, and what can I say? I think The Medium is the perfect introduction. This is a wonderful performance on Cedille Records, featuring Patrice Michaels Bedi and Joyce Castle as Madame Flora. Oh, yeah. And Diana Ragains and Peter van de Graaf, Barbara Landis, and Joanna Lind. It's a small cast, 5 people, and the story is just fabulous. Madame Flora is a fraud. She's a medium. She runs seances to grab people's cash. She has a daughter who's very sweet and very nice, and she plays the ghost in the seances, to try and fool people into thinking they're seeing things. And then there's a mute boy who works for her, who can't speak because he's mute, obviously, and he also engineers the spooky stuff, to trick people into thinking they're hearing what they're hearing. And of course, people who attend these things are so desperate to get word of their, beloved lost people that they tend to believe what they want to believe, whether it's true or not. So Madame Flora is running a seance, and all of a sudden, she feels something grab her throat, some spiritual essence, and it freaks her out. She goes completely nuts. She's been scamming people for the longest time, and she can't imagine that anything real about any of it. And so when this supernatural event happens, it just completely discombobulates her life. And so she starts going crazy trying to figure out what was the source of this. And meanwhile, these people who she's giving seances to keep showing up, wanting more. And finally, she chases them off. She's very cruel. She's cruel to her daughter. She's cruel to Toby. And she comes to the conclusion that Toby is behind it all, or something like that is happening. And he's hiding behind his curtain like the Wizard of Oz doing things. And she shoots him and kills him. And that is the story, because she thinks he is the source of the, apparition which seized her. But unfortunately, he cannot speak. And so she never gets the answer that she deserves. And it ends tragically. It's really quite the piece. And this is a lovely performance featuring the Chicago Opera Theater under Lawrence Rapchak with the cast I just mentioned. A very, very good cast. Now, Menotti had a very, very good career on disc during his lifetime. People performed his operas, people recorded them, major artists. Most of those recordings have been re-released on Naxos Historical. They're available. And there are some other more modern recordings, which I can talk about and probably will, because I do want to do some digging, with respect to Menotti. He doesn't deserve his neglect. And I really think that composers who care about audiences and who care about people really ought to get a little bit of attention. I mean, they deserve a little bit of indulgence. I mean, if it turns out the music is garbage, okay, fine. Then everyone's going to ignore it ultimately. But until that time, I think we should give it a chance. We should give it the consideration that he gave us. And I'm happy to do it. So if you have not heard Menotti, or if you have been told that it's all junk or poo-pooed, or it's not worth paying attention to, or it's cheap and sleazy and pandering, it isn't any of those things. It isn't any of those things at all. He was a completely sincere composer, and his operas, some of them are just first class. So give the medium a listen. It's spooky and it's fun. So, and keep on listening while we're at it. Take care.